Hey podcast listeners, a quick disclaimer about today's episode. So normally on the podcast Aquatic, we try and keep our run times relatively brief, about 30 minutes or less. Today's chat about turtles at the aquarium goes a little bit long, but that's okay, because turtles are really cool animals, as you'll soon discover. So stick with us, be patient, and have fun. All right, on with the podcast. Hello, and thank you for joining us for another episode of the podcast Aquatic, the official podcast of the Tennessee Aquarium. I'm Casey Phillips, the communications specialist here at the aquarium and your host of the podcast. Today, let's talk about turtles. I don't really need much of an excuse to talk about turtles, and I think that's probably true for today's guest, Bill Hughes, as well. Bill, you're our herpetology coordinator here at the aquarium, is that right?
Herpetology collection coordinator.
Herpetology collection coordinator. Okay. We should probably back up just a little bit, because as someone who has never heard the word before, what exactly is herpetology?
Herpetology is officially the study of reptiles and amphibians, and they've always been lumped together that way. But
Why is that?
I don't know. I guess it's kind of a commonality. People that tend to like reptiles tend to like amphibians. In general, I mean, I don't really do much of amphibians. I don't dislike them, but I'm just not really knowledgeable about them. And I feel like I just kind of make that up as I go if I have to do anything intensive with amphibians besides throw crickets at them or say, hey, that's a species of frog. And I'm not even really that good at that. I don't remember. I should know the Greek word. The Greek word is herpetos, and I think it means crawling things. So if that's not just a false memory, then I think, maybe people just lump snakes and turtles and lizards and crocodilians and frogs and salamanders as crawling things.
Hey, podcast aquanauts. This is Future Casey with a quick aside. The word that Bill is looking for here is herpeton, which is Greek, and it means creeping things or crawling things. Okay, back to the podcast. It feels like it could lead to a lot of cases of mistaken identity. People who just think that amphibians must be reptiles or reptiles must be amphibians. It seems like they're confused a lot.
I think so. You get some strange things, and it kind of takes you aback when people say things like that. Like, I thought this was a fish. It happens a lot with the reptiles in general. They still run into people, and it's okay. Maybe they missed all these things. They're always shocked when they learn that a turtle can't come out of its shell like a hermit crab. They think, the shell and the turtle are two different units and they come apart, and that's not true. So it's interesting, but yeah, you get people that the distinction's not really there. And interestingly enough, there are some animals that, in some kind of relic species that people are still debating over years, not necessarily with the reptile and amphibian, but like where they fall in the whole organizational thing. Like, is this thing a lizard? Is it a snake? Is it something in between? There's a lot of that.
So what did you study in school to make your way onto the path of becoming a herpetologist?
I used to think that I kind of fell into this, but then I think maybe this was the plan all along, and I kept getting distracted. So I went to school and was studying math and was aiming for like an academic career in mathematics. But I got distracted by reptiles, and then I quit school for a while, and I did other things, and I ended up working at a zoo in Tampa for a while, and I thought that was really cool, but it seemed more like a distraction from the math thing. So
how do you get distracted by reptiles?
You think about them all the time, and then you go, hey, shouldn't I be doing something else? And you're going, nah, it's okay. I'm not a psychologist, but I would think that my parents discouraged any interest in reptiles, and especially snakes. So I think maybe the seeds of the lifelong interest were planted by rebellion. Take that, mom and dad. But I got the math degree, then I decided to go get the PhD, and then I quit that because it really wasn't what I wanted to do. Again, distracted by reptiles, but I ended up working in the software industry for a few years. And the other people at the company I worked for were all very excited about software, and I liked doing it, but they spent their weekends doing software-y kind of things. And I was going to zoos or reptile shows on the weekends. I didn't understand their infatuation of doing it 24/7. They didn't understand my infatuation with not doing it 24/7. So at some point, circumstances aligned, and there was a position here, and I applied for it and got it. And now 20 years have passed, and I'm still here. So I think this is the correct route.
So, Bill, I can hear the steady beeping of myself backing into the actual reason for us having this conversation. Which,
that's right. There was one of those, wasn't there?
As I mentioned earlier, the point of this conversation really, I mean, it is interesting to talk about herpetology, but is to talk about turtles in particular, because as we established earlier, you work often with turtles.
Yes.
Is it fair to say that turtles occupy the majority of your time at the aquarium?
I think so. I'm pretty sure if I sat down, anything I do, I could somehow connect it back to a turtle.
So if you look at all the different herps, reptiles, and amphibians here at the aquarium that technically would fall, I guess, under your purview, how do turtles rank? Like, where are they your favorite?
They're my favorite. They're the animal we have the most of than other herps, reptiles and amphibians.
I think we can say herps. I think for the rest of this conversation, herps is an acceptable.
Fewer syllables, yes.
So how many turtles do we have? And if you don't have an accurate number, just a guesstimate, it's fine.
I have a good number. We've hatched a few things out recently, so I'm not sure the exact number, but about 470.
470 individuals?
Yes.
How many species does that represent?
That one's about 80 or 81.
Now that seems like a lot. How many, worldwide, how many turtle species are there so people can get an idea of what that represents in terms of turtle species worldwide?
Okay, yeah. The number fluctuates a little bit because there's always, it seems like even once it's resolved, it's not, that there's always a little bit of taxonomic indecision, but about 360 species worldwide.
Just doing a little bit of mental arithmetic, that means that we have roughly a quarter of all the world's turtle species?
Yeah.
Okay, so I know there are superlatives associated with our collection. It's the largest collection at a public institution, or what's the...
I think it's the largest... Yeah, I think that's the statement. It's the largest at a public institution. Like there are some other places that have them that aren't, they're not open to the public. There's an AZA facility in California that has quite a few, but they're not open to the public. Zoos or aquariums, I think we're up there still.
And if you've ever visited the aquarium, or when you do visit the aquarium, if you're listening to this, maybe on the way to visit for the first time, you will encounter turtles in a lot of our exhibits. I was doing sort of a mental cataloging of our exhibits earlier, and there are definitely some exhibits that don't have turtles, but I would say that probably there are more exhibits that have them than don't.
So a few years ago, I had to do a presentation for something, and this came up. And that's how I started the presentation. So I did not count Ocean Journey. The number I remember, and I actually called it the TIR, the turtle infestation rate. At the time, this is probably 7 or 8 years ago, the TIR was about 60%, which doesn't sound like a lot, but that means more than half of the exhibits you see have a turtle in it.
So people who are listening to this and have never been to the aquarium, or again, even if you have been to the aquarium, you might have wondered, why does an aquarium have so many turtles? So Bill, as our herpetology collection coordinator, why does the Tennessee Aquarium have so many turtles?
Historically, the aquarium's always had turtles. I think from when it opened, the original herpetology staff and our original curator were very interested in turtles and kind of shaped that. And, sometimes things like that subside over time or change over time. But in our case, we've just kind of run with it. And so we're still focused on turtles. And there's a variety of reasons that displaying turtles is good. Turtles are now, well, at least they were, they probably still are considered the most endangered vertebrate species. Like more than half of the 360 are under some kind of threat. So, the populations worldwide aren't doing great. We have the experience base with it because we've been doing turtles since we opened. So it's 92. So 32 years experience with turtles. And so that helps a lot. So we know what to do with turtles. We know how to display turtles. One thing that I thought about before we did this today was we used to do camp up on top of level 6 where we have a bunch on the roof of the aquarium inside the glass peaks. We have a bunch of turtles off exhibit for breeding and just raising them up. We used to bring camp kids up there and they say why do you have so many turtles? And originally I'd say, because because we like turtles. But the better answer is it's a space thing up on top of the roof in a fairly small area because it's not the entire roof. It's just one piece. I'm actually looking at it here trying to guesstimate, but square footage isn't that much up there. But we have a few colonies of turtles that are reproducing, that are critically endangered, that we send out to other institutions and just trying to keep an assurance colony in case something happens. And what I told the kids, kind of facetious, but also true. It's I can have a lot of turtles in that one little area and they do well and they're breeding and making more turtles. how many rhinos could I have up here? Or how many elephants? Or even if I don't get that crazy, like what else could I do with this space? It's like we've gotten really good at using space for turtles because they're not going to need as much spaces.
So it's an efficiency thing.
Yes.
Yes. Well, partly it's an efficiency.
Yeah. So it's like many things. It's a lot of different factors, but that's one of them. It's like we in our turtle exhibit, we've got a high species count down there. I don't know what it is right now, but it's pretty high. If it was other things, if it was bigger animals, maybe we can have that kind of diversity on exhibit. And I think it's important to show diversity because, it's the same thing. If you don't see it, you don't know about it. People may not know that there's that many species of turtles, and then, or they think all turtles look alike, but then you have a whole bunch of different ones in one space. You go, hey, these are kind of interesting animals. There's a lot of diversity going on, and, maybe they are important after all.
I think a lot of the confusion that people have when it comes to why we have so many turtles and their head scratching over the number that they see in the exhibits is really tied up in a fundamental misunderstanding about what aquariums do. People tend to think of, people who don't know or who only think of them maybe in terms of their historic role, think of them as just a place to go and see fish, like a house of fish. But really what we do at the aquarium and what you'll see if you come and visit, or what you have seen if you have visited, is celebrate the role that water plays in all different ecosystems. And water being a fundamental building block of all life has an impact on basically every ecosystem on Earth. And it just so happens that turtles are found all over the planet. So it just kind of stands to reason that if you're going to exhibit lots of different ecosystems around the world and have a huge variety of animals, you could kind of have turtles in each of those exhibits because turtles are probably represented in most of the habitats that we are trying to recreate here.
That's true. And I can clarify it too and say that the vast majority of the turtles we have are either aquatic or semi-aquatic, that they spend a lot of time in water, or they at least spend some time in water.
And if it helps people to sleep at night who are really seriously concerned about this, the other reason that it makes a lot of sense for us to be a turtle exhibition capital here at the Tennessee Aquarium is the fact that Chattanooga and the Tennessee Aquarium sit essentially at the bullseye center of one of the global hotspots of turtle biodiversity.
Right. The southeastern U.S. is one of the hotspots. So we're kind of right in the middle of it.
The other would be where?
Southeast Asia.
I feel like fewer people would be surprised by Southeast Asia, I guess, because to those of us here in America, that just feels like an exotic place.
From a herpetology standpoint, it's warm, so we have a lot of snakes down here, which is a good thing. We have a lot of turtles, the Appalachians, Smokies. It's a hotspot for salamander biodiversity. It's just a good area for species diversity in general.
Yeah, there's a lot going on here. It's interesting I didn't know this. Even despite growing up in Knoxville, so just about 100 miles north of Chattanooga, I didn't realize how lucky we are here in the Southeast to live in the middle of what we at the aquarium have termed an underwater rainforest. People think of rainforest like the Amazon as being a hotspot of speciation. And really the Southeast in general is an uncelebrated hotspot, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, they still find new species of salamanders occasionally. I mean, actually, this year or last year, the black belly salamanders got split up. It was one species, and now it's 4 or 5 different species. So it's possible there's more. There's a green salamanders or have a range. I don't remember the range offhand, but they're here. But there is a different species of those that they found within the past couple of years in North Carolina. So there's always things that, the species are still there waiting to be discovered. It's not, like I said, it's not like the turtle thing either. It's not like it's just cut and dry that there's this many species. There's still stuff out there that we haven't found yet here, not in some exotic locale, but nearby.
You gotta be careful, Bill. That was amphibian talk there.
That's true.
You're gonna lose your turtle hero card.
I try to make it so it's herpetology and not turtle collection coordinator.
For a lot of people, including your parents, apparently, there are a lot of weighted feelings about reptiles. I think it's fair to say a lot of people get kind of hung up on
snakes.
Have a lot of feelings about snakes, but lizards too. You know, in fact, on a previous episode of the podcast Aquatic, you'll have met our ambassador animal coordinator, who talked about her own fear of reptiles that she has, thankfully overcome, and would now consider herself a friend of reptiles. But yeah, for a lot of people, there is that fear of reptiles. But I think the exception to that is turtles. People, by and large, seem to be fans of turtles.
I think so. Turtles are non-threatening. I guess there's no innate fear of them. We actually talked about that at some point. It sounds facetious again, and maybe it is, but we have the turtle nursery, and no one ever goes, "Oh no, turtles! I must not look at this. I have to bypass it. It's too scary."
So this is in our river journey.
This is our river journey building.
You can go and see lots of little baby turtles. They're real cute.
But we said that if it was a snake nursery, we specifically said if it's a pit viper nursery, which actually sounds pretty cool.
I think that'd be awesome.
It would be, but I bet we'd have to have a bypass, so a lot of people wouldn't be comfortable knowing it was there or even want to see it. I've not seen anyone down there going, "Oh no, turtles, run."
Now, were you here when the aquarium had the venom gallery?
No, that predated me.
Okay, so there was a time in our distant past that predates both Bill and me when we did have a gallery that was focused exclusively on, I believe it was all poisonous snakes.
It was venomous snakes.
Venomous snakes.
And there were some insects and stuff too, and invertebrates like arthropods. I think there were some spiders, centipedes, snakes. I'm not sure what else. I never saw it. I kind of sad I missed it, but I never.
Yeah, I would have loved to have been here at the time because I am not afraid of those animals. Though I do understand that people have deep-seated and sometimes justifiable reasons for being afraid of them. Maybe often just based on confusion. But speaking of confusion, I'm sure that I'm going to have to ask this multiple times in the course of hosting this podcast because I will never get the definition straight. But go ahead and remind us the difference between poisonous and venomous.
So the trite answer that I heard a while ago, it's easy to remember this way. Venom is when it tries to eat you, and poison is when you try to eat it. So poisonous is usually something that you would ingest, like mushrooms are poisonous.
That's a good.
Some amphibians are poisonous.
I like that.
But venom is when it actually has something that, it injects venom in you. It's a defense mechanism, but it's also for prey. It starts the digestion process before the snake actually eats it. You just, it's just inject those digestive enzymes into the prey animal. So
spiders would be venomous too.
Yes.
Then. Okay. I might actually be able to remember that for once. So poison is when you eat it, and venom is when it eats you.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna have to work a lot harder, I think, when I do an episode on why you should like snakes. I feel like turtles are a little bit easier to like. But anyway, so speaking of the reasons why people should like turtles, beyond just their non-threatening, they play a pretty important role ecologically speaking too. So kind of walk people through why turtles are important to our ecosystems.
They're important, and it's going to vary from turtle to turtle and where you are. Some species are scavengers. They'll eat dead things, so they're kind of like the cleanup crew. Some species eat plants, and the seeds come out in the wash, and so
they poop them out. We can say poop. It's all right.
They poop them out, and the official term then would be that they're seed dispersers. Like a parrot, they're dropping seeds, and these guys are just going along and dropping the seeds behind them. But in any event, they serve a role. They're spreading plants around, and they're interesting animals. They've been here a long time. If you look at fossil turtles, size apart, the idea is kind of the same. That modified rib cage protecting the turtle,
the shell basically.
The shell, yeah. It hasn't changed a lot. Just varies some, but it's a good idea. It's like it's a successful adaptation.
Would turtles be considered as a group living fossils then?
I don't think so. I don't think that. I've
never heard them called that before.
That term applied to them.
Now you hear it applied to things like horseshoe crabs and I think
coelacanths
and sharks, just in general, and sturgeon I think are often referred to as living fossils. I've never heard turtles referred to that way, though. I mean,
I wonder if it's because the fossil records, the animals are pretty similar, or almost the same. Whereas turtles, they're not as gigantic. They're not quite this. It's not the same turtle. Like maybe a fossil sturgeon isn't, depending on how old it is, it's not that different from a modern sturgeon. But like a fossil turtle, it's recognized as a turtle, but you couldn't say it maps to this species or that's currently living. Maybe it's just not changed much.
Yeah. So, and to back up slightly, a living fossil is something that it's a term that those of us who are not scientists kind of like, because it does what it says on the tin. It's an animal that hasn't really changed much despite existing on Earth for a long, 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 long time.
Yeah.
All right. So that being said, turtles are successful. They're in all corners of the Earth, with the exception, I think, of Antarctica. But as you alluded to earlier, turtles are not doing well. You said, they're the most imperiled group of vertebrates on the planet. Why is that?
The short answer, and I'm not being facetious, and it's just a real, if he's answering 25 words or less, I'd say humans.
As is unfortunately too often the case.
They're not threatening animals. It's like, you can go pick up a turtle. That's cool, but it's also not the turtle's best interest that, one of us can just go, hey, it's a turtle, grab it. It has no defense against that. But turtles are heavily impacted by humans. It's habitat loss. It's consumption for food. It's for the pet trade. It's for traditional medicine in Southeast Asia. It's a warming climate. One thing that has come up that maybe people don't think about, and I think people are working on this question, but I'm not sure what the answer is. If it actually is getting hotter, let's just presume that it is. If it's getting hotter, a lot of turtles, not all, their sex of the hatchlings is determined by the incubation temperature. And so I think in general, hotter temperatures produce females. And that's interesting. That means like if we had some rare species, and we've done this occasionally, if we want to get males and females, I can split up the clutch and hatch them at different temperatures and say, I'm pretty sure when these mature in a decade or so, these will be males and these will be females. But if temperatures are rising worldwide, or at least where turtles are, that means the sexes of the hatchlings are going to start skewing toward females in most cases, which, that's not necessarily good if males are becoming scarce. It's like it wouldn't matter which way it's skewed. If it skews sharply one toward one or the other, you need both sexes. But if you're only increasingly hatching only one sex, that's not going to be a viable population after a while. I think that's kind of the big ones.
Okay, so turtles are in trouble.
Yes.
Point made. What are we doing here at the aquarium to try and help turtles? We've talked about a couple of things.
We're doing a few things. One, I guess our main job is education. We're saying, hey, look, these are turtles. These are important animals.
We're podcasting about them.
You're podcasting about them. We should appreciate them. We should like them. We should help protect them. By having all these rare species in the nursery, especially, we're showing people the diversity, but we're also, I like to think all these guys are ambassadors for their species that maybe before you came here and saw them, you didn't even know these existed. Our department doesn't necessarily do any field work, but I guess our role is more like we're maintaining assurance colonies of these animals. So that if something catastrophic happened to some in the wild, because a lot of them, not a lot, more than you'd want to, their population in the wild are pretty precarious. And so the argument was made a while ago, and it's what we've done, is that we have some of these guys and we're breeding them, or we're raising offspring, and other places are doing this too, in case that last little bit of wild population winks out, then they're not gone. Like if, hey, we cut down this last bit of forest and, oh, wait, that was where these box turtles, these Asian box turtles were, these McCord's box turtles, and there aren't anymore, but there's a bunch in Europe and there's a bunch in the US.
So we're talking about extinction.
Yes.
Extinction in the wild.
Yes, extinction in the wild. So if that happened, they're not all gone. There's some here and other places, and they're breeding, and there's still a population. So it's an assurance colony. I've also heard people call it an insurance colony, which I guess both of them work. It's like a fallback plan in case something happens.
Another term I've heard used is ark population.
Yeah.
So you think about things like Noah's Ark, all the animals on the boat being an assurance colony, basically. So we've had success not just in exhibiting turtles. You mentioned hatching turtles, and you are responsible really for the lion's share of success with a couple of different species of turtles in terms of getting them to reproduce in human care. So talk a little bit about the four-eyed turtle and the Beale's four-eyed turtle.
So both of these species, they're Asian. The four-eyed turtle is in Laos and Vietnam, and I think southern China and Hainan Island. And I don't remember, Beale's might just be Beale's is just in China, but they're small turtles. The four-eyes are critically endangered. The Beale's is endangered.
Future Casey here again. It occurred to me after the fact that I allowed Bill in the moment to get away with not explaining the name four-eyed turtle. So those of you who are listening might be thinking, wait, does this turtle have four eyes? Does it have glasses on? I think obviously the answer to both of those questions is no, but the real reason is actually pretty interesting. So the name of the four-eyed turtle comes from the four false eye spots, also known as ocelli, on the back of its head. These spots are thought to deter, distract, or confuse would-be predators by making them think that the turtle is looking up at them. Predators like to sneak up on things after all, so the thought of something looking at you kind of ruins the surprise. Anyway, four eye spots, not four eyes. Back to the podcast.
We've had success with them. I think a couple of reasons. One is that we've had them up in the greenhouse, and the original ones that bred had been here a long time. And maybe in, I think 2007 or so, we started hatching some of these guys, and that was pretty good. I think one of the other reasons for success is that I got interested in them. And I guess that's a big thing. It's other institutions too. This is not about me. This is a pattern that we notice with zoos and aquariums, is that a place will have really good success with the species because somebody there is super interested in them. And you notice that more, I guess we notice it more from the turtle point of view, is that somebody's really making a lot of babies with these, doing really well with them, but then they retire or they go to another institution or something, and then nothing is happening. So that's not really a cautionary tale, but I think it's more that someone's interested enough to like maybe micromanage them enough, or maybe just tamper with the diet enough, or just become more frustrated, stubborn enough, and going, you're going to breed, I'm going to figure out how to do this. And I think maybe that was it. But I can't really say that for the four eyes, because that was just more like putting them together, changed their diets a bit, and started getting eggs, and then became more interested in them. And we had some success at the beginning, but we had a really small population with both those species. But it was interesting, and it's why media stuff is a good thing. We publicized it. I think when we first hatched the Beale's, and we hatched some four eyes.
And that made national headlines.
It made national headlines. But what was the side effects of that were, some zoo had a pair of Beale's that they had had for years that never bred, so they sent them here, and they've been pretty reproductive. It took them a couple of years, but they finally kicked in. It's an easy thing. The more of species you have, if you have enough of them breeding, even if they don't all breed in a given year, you still have babies. And I think that's what's happened with us. We got enough, like that booster population really helped our efforts.
And I love how you described this once when we were talking about, I think it might have been four-eyes or Beale's when they hatched, that each one feels like a little success story.
You say that for any animal that you reproduce on human care. It's like, this animal is rare or something, and maybe it's having trouble in the wild. But if you hatch one, or if you had one born, you kind of go, ooh, it's a plus one. It's not a minus one. So that's always a good feeling.
Yeah, it's funny. You as a person have such a dry sense of humor. And you kind of hold your emotions in check, I feel like.
Not me.
A little bit. And when you said that it was like a little success story, you had like a smile on your face. And because you are so, not guarded, but because you kind of hold your emotions more in check than a lot of people, it was really cool to see you being, I think, justifiably excited about that work.
I was. It's when the American forest turtles hatched too, because we didn't we'd hatch some, and the species is kind of not in zoos as much as it used to be. It's like I managed it as a program, and I felt like there were more zoos that had them when I started, and now there's less zoos. So, I was trying to recoup and have more of them here in hopes we could breed them and get more people interested in them again. Because I didn't want them to just kind of like be, remember when those things used to be in zoos? Because I felt like we're kind of on the edge of that with these guys. So the first year we hatched a couple and I went, that's pretty cool. But then when we hatched like a really big clutch, that was really cool too. Because now there's surplus ones to kind of hopefully interest some other institution in and send out.
That's right. That was when we had 5 hatch earlier this year.
7.
7?
7.
It was 7. That feels like a lot.
Because we had 5 adults. So we had the 5 adults and we had the 2 babies in the year before. So we had 7. So we just kind of like doubled the population in one fell swoop.
That's pretty incredible. You mentioned that the Beal's four-eyed turtle, we hatched the first one in 2007. How many have we hatched now?
20 something, 25. I should know the number, but I always had to look it up.
It's a lot of success.
There's not enough room left in my head to keep that number. And it changes. It's kind of like the species of turtles. It's like I know about what it is, but I don't know what it is exactly. I think the quadros, a lot of the four-eyes is double that, or maybe a little bit more.
Hey, Aquanauts. So understandably, Bill couldn't just conjure up the number of hatchlings that we've had for the Beal's four-eyed and four-eyed turtle in the last 15 years. Thankfully, our registrar has come in clutch with some statistics to fill in the gaps in his knowledge. Since 2007, the aquarium has hatched 59 of the four-eyed turtle and 25 of the Beal's four-eyed turtle. So the four-eyed turtle is the critically endangered one. The Beal's four-eyed turtle is endangered. They're closely related, though. And as a bonus statistic, since the Tennessee Aquarium opened in 1992, we've hatched more than 1,150 turtles across 45 different species. That's totally awesome. Anyway, back to the podcast. I should give you kudos for not inserting a lot of scientific names into this conversation. I feel like when I talk to...
I'm holding myself back.
I know, I can tell. There are a lot of people here at the aquarium who, you live and breathe this stuff. And I feel like the scientific name is more often than not the one that they refer to an animal by, which is confounding for people like me who are idiots and never went to school to study biology.
It's hard, but I'm doing it. It really is a thing. It's like common should be in quotes because common depends on where you are. And nothing else is deficiency. Like saying herps instead of reptiles and amphibians is easier to say depressa than it is to say American forest turtle.
It just sounds sad though. Depressa. Every time you say that.
Because their shell's flattened.
Just makes me think of somebody who's sad. Bill, do you have, as a parting thought, a joke about a turtle that you'd like to share? If you don't, that's okay. But I feel like you're the kind of person who keeps these in your back pocket.
I feel like I really should. I just guess I don't have any good turtle jokes. I guess I feel like that's a shortcoming on my part. I thought you were going to ask me my favorite turtle because that's what everyone asks.
Well, all right. We can. I thought a joke would be funnier, but we can end with what's your favorite turtle? Let's stick with here.
Yes, stick at the aquarium. I'm going to go with 2 things. The species changes occasionally depending where my focus is or what's caught my attention lately. But I'm still riding the depressa wave, and I really like the depressa, and I like the adults upstairs, and so I still like them a lot.
So as a reminder for people who aren't
American forest turtle.
There we go, the American forest turtle.
American forest turtles. I used to like the spiny turtles the most, but as a friend from another institution told me years ago, he said, I'm going to use depressa again because it's shorter. He said, depressa are like bland-looking spiny turtles that actually move around because spiny turtles are pretty sedentary and don't move for days at a time. The depressa actually will run around and come running up when you have food and stuff. So I think that they're more interactive. So I'm going to go with that. It's like species. I'm liking depressa now. If you ask me again in 7 to 14 business days, it might change. Individuals, I'm really enjoying the little tiny soft shell in the nursery right now. We have a small Florida soft shell that came from a strange confiscation, and soft shells have a reputation for being, so I use the proper scientific name, jerks. They like to bite and they're hard to handle and they're hard to hold on to. It's like a wet floppy pancake with a mouth and claws. But the little guy, he's pretty calm. When I put food in there for him, he kind of comes over, looks at me, eats it. I guess he's just happy to be here. I'm happy he's here.
Personally, I'm a big fan of the Chinese big-headed turtle. That is probably my favorite. We used to have one, an older one that was on exhibit in our
Turtles, Nature's Living Sculptures.
That's right. Turtles, Nature's Living Sculpture, which was the predecessor to our current Turtles of the World gallery, which opened back in the year 2020. Right.
What's that year again? Something about that year I can't put my finger on.
March of 2020 is when that gallery opened.
Are you just going to allude to that? Or are you just going to?
Oh no! Everyone knows it's COVID, but yeah.
No, but I mean, that gallery especially was impacted by COVID because we had it open, had turtles in it. We had the grand opening ceremonies, and then we had the soft opening. We had everything was done except for we don't cut ribbons, but that sort of thing. Like today's the first day it's officially open, but that was the first day we closed because of COVID. And we were closed for 3 months. So
the next day we were closed for 96 straight days.
So we spent months building and populating this new exhibit, and we're really happy with it. And then
you and I were the only ones who got to enjoy it for about 3 solid months.
I like to think now it kind of spoiled me in a sense because any new exhibit has bugs. It's like software. It's got bugs in it. You gotta find them and fix it. But normally we do that when it's up and running with people watching us try to fix the bugs. So that was one of the few benefits of being closed, is that we had 3 months to get all the bugs and stuff out.
While the world worked on getting the bug of a different sort out.
Yes.
All right. Bill, I think we can probably wrap up our conversation about turtles, our turtle talk, with thanks to you for taking the time to lend us your expertise and your dry, always amusing wit.
Thanks for the invite. It was fun. Let's do it again sometime.
If you have an idea for a future episode of the podcast Aquatic, or a question for someone like Bill, or a turtle joke that you can share with Bill, who has an unfortunate lack of them in his back pocket,
gap that I don't know how to fill,
send your suggestion, your question, or your joke to podcast@tnaqua.org, and we will see you next time on the podcast Aquatic. Bill, thanks again.
Thank you.